is home now. Well, welcome to Deschutes National Forest in Central Oregon, Bend, Oregon specifically. A lot has happened in the last 6 months, and I'm gonna try my very best to do a little bit of a recap and a reintroduction of this channel. It's super, super bright outside, so let's step inside the house. Hey, pup. All right. Well, as you can see, this is not the RV. So, as of this recording, we are a few days away now from Thanksgiving. So, November 2019. A lot has happened. This is my new home. I have made a move, and I kind of wanted to just fill you in, and Quirks really wants to join in on the video today. So, what happened to the RV? I bought this RV, in April? End of April this year. Gave my 30-day notice. Moved into the RV in about May. Lived in the RV around town, around Burbank, California, where I was working, just trying to stay local. Stealthing in a very not stealth vehicle. For maybe a month and a half. So from about May, end of May to beginning of July, mid-July, I lived in that RV, trying my best to stay stealth, not succeeding all the time. And there were just a lot of experiences that started to give me anxiety. I ran into issues with kind of stereotyping. It was an older RV. I loved her vintage looks. Abigail, I miss Abigail. She was very, very comfortable to live in. I had not initially been looking at RVs for vehicle dwelling, van lifing. I had never considered an RV, and when a friend sent me a link to one on Craigslist, I kind of dove down that rabbit hole, got really excited, and when I purchased Abigail and lived in her for that month and a half, living with that much space to myself, I really was spoiled, and it was really hard to make the decision to let her go and sell her. The final reason really became just the fact that she wasn't mobile enough. She was probably not going to get me deeper into the backcountry or to more remote areas or trails, and I was beginning to experience a lot of anxiety about stealthing in such a large, very conspicuous vehicle. I'd experienced problems with security guards at shopping centers, even where I was working, and you start to dread the knock on your RV door. I even experienced a homeless man, probably on drugs, trying my RV door as soon as I parked. In the RV, unfortunately, I felt like there was a sort of target on my back, and that's not a great feeling to live with. And I knew for myself that for at least a year I was going to be living around cities and tied to Burbank at that point, at least a year. And I decided that it just was not worth the anxiety and the stress. So I sold Abigail, and almost immediately after I sold her, the very next day, I bought this van. This van is a Ford E350 XLT, so it's an extended body. It's a passenger van, but it's a 15-passenger van. So it's a mess. This is van life. If we don't understand this about van life yet, and you want to believe all those beautifully curated videos and those van tours where everything's got its perfect little place, let me burst that bubble for you. That is not the situation in this van as of yet. So this is the van. This is my bed area. It's probably pretty hard to see. a lot of this stuff that you're seeing on the bed gets moved and shifted every single time it is time to go to bed. There will be another video with a proper van tour, but what you're seeing was all made by me. And that was, again, something that I don't think I was necessarily ready to take on initially considering van dwelling, vehicle dwelling, which is probably why I went with the RV. I just didn't feel like I was up to the task of converting and building a van myself, and I didn't think that I had the budget to purchase a pre-converted van that was done in such a way that I think I would have been really happy to keep. Essentially, I knew I was always going to have to modify, build, do something in a van, and I don't know that I was ready to do that when I first started on this journey in vehicle dwelling. So that's where Abigail came from, but didn't work out, sold her, got this van, and it was go time. At the time I was in between vehicles. I luckily still had my Honda Element, which you may or may not know that I had. That, interestingly, was in its half converted state, because at one point I had even considered full-time living in the Honda Element. So that would have been like the tail end of 2018 when I was building a setup for the Honda Element. So I only ever got half done with that, and there was essentially just one side, like a shelf unit, that was built. It allowed me to get things up off of the floor, and it allowed me a space to put like what was going to be a bench style bed. Never ended up happening, but still enough space for a sleeping pad and for me to sleep. So once I sold Abigail, I didn't have a room to rent. I then immediately bought this van, and I still had the Honda Element. So I was essentially part-timing in the Honda Element. I had set up the Honda Element so that it was essentially a moving bedroom. And with the help of that half-built shelf conversion, or that half-built state that I had it, having the shelf unit, really made it just kind of a cozy little space. So the setup looked like this. My family was in the Inland Empire. That's where I would keep this van in its unconverted, torn out, demoed, all the states that it was in. And anytime that I had to work in Burbank, those chunks of days, I would pack a bag, pack up the Honda Element, stay in the Honda Element those few days when I was working in the town, and then chunks of days off, I'd be back at the Inland Empire at my family's house working on this van. Started working on this van in July, had set a goal of my birthday, September. I had planned a road trip up the Pacific Northwest, going through Oregon, visiting a friend in Bend, and then cutting over east to a friend's homestead cabin in Eastern Washington. So my timeline was get the van, convert it, get it road ready, not fully built out, but road ready for this road trip by September 10th was the day that I took off. That meant insulation, walls, floor, ceiling, vent fan, because it was still going to be kind of summery months, end of summer, and solar. So I had to figure out all that, the basics, electrical, vent fan, and figuring out my electrical setup and how I wanted that to look before this trip. It seems like plenty of time for someone who has very rudimentary carpentry skills, zero electrical skills. It was a monumental feat, and I somehow did it. And I took the road trip. It was an amazing trip. The second solo road trip I've ever taken in my entire life. The first one being Thanksgiving of last year, which you might remember. There is a video of that, I believe. And it was going to be a big one, and it was going to be the maiden voyage of this van. So I'll go more into details of all the obstacles that this van presented to me upon purchase. and the build process. A bunch of footage was lost, so good luck there. I'm gonna do my best to tell that story. But the road trip went amazingly, and I kind of fell in love with Bend, Oregon a lot harder than I had expected to. Now, I don't know that I've ever spoken about this, but in the last couple years, I have been wanting to get myself moved to either Oregon or Washington. Was more leaning towards Oregon, but I really had no idea where, and I had always kind of used Portland as the main city and destination of that goal because growing up in Los Angeles all my life, I didn't want to culture shock myself, so I just kind of was like, Oregon I think is where it feels good for me. Portland, that's where I'm going. Spending time in Bend, it was my first time in Central Oregon. It's the tail end of the summer. Everything is super accessible. The outdoors is literally right here. Bend is not a huge town, but it's considered a metropolitan city in Central Oregon. But yeah, I kind of basically fell for Bend a lot harder than I had expected. And I returned from my road trip at the end of September and had immediately heard about a position opening up at the REI here in Bend. Immediately applied the first day back at work. As it started to look like it was becoming real, mind you, this is like within the first couple weeks of having returned from this road trip, having never had a goal of living in Bend, Oregon, always wanting to get to Oregon, but never specifically Bend. I was now considering moving, and I still had this van to finish. This van was essentially in its half converted state, but I still had to build out all the furniture. That means a kitchen, figuring out plumbing, a bed, storage, all those things. And when essentially I figured out that I did get a job and was able to transfer to this REI, I had about 3 weeks to finish all of that. 3 weeks to finish a build, as well as pack up all my belongings, get rid of anything that I wasn't going to be taking with me and that I could not fit into storage here, and schlep it all up to Central Oregon. That deadline came, that deadline went, and made it happen. And the adjustment has been pretty seamless. It's been an amazing experience, and I've had just the best time figuring out my new life here. So I mentioned this is going to be a bit of a reintroduction for this channel. There might be a change in the name of the channel. That is coming. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, I post a lot of stories there. And what I think this channel will end up being, I hope that it's not just going to be another van life channel, because there's plenty of those online. I hope that what you're gonna see on this channel is going to be a lot of outdoor adventures, some van life hacks, tips, and tricks, and mostly just life here in Central Oregon. This is a pretty big change for me. I have lived my entire life in Southern California, and it is my first time moving away from a city that I have known with friends and family. I'm on my own out here. I have one very good friend in town. It is a fresh new start. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's been a lot of me talking. I hope you guys stick around as this channel morphs and changes into what I hope will be a place where you can find out a little bit about van life, find out a little bit about me and my life, maybe see more of this sleepy puppy, you know, that sort of thing. Anyway, toodles, thanks for watching.